Ryan is the user story. Cool. 4 o'clock? Cool. I think it's about 4 o'clock. It looks like everyone's pretty much coming in, so we'll make a start, eh? Yeah, thanks everyone for coming to the ArcGIS Online session today. It's good to see you all in person. And it's the last session of the day, so we'll hopefully keep this on time for you all. Introducing the team up here today, you've got myself, my name is James Wright. I'm part of the Technical Solutions team here at Eagle. I'm based in Christchurch, and I'll let the rest of the team introduce themselves there. If the microphone works.
Hi.
Okay, mics aren't going to work, but we've got Ashley on my left here, Ryan, Ed, and Julian with their various roles on the screen there. Cool, a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Hopefully you've been to a session already and you're familiar with Slido. If you are not yet, there's a QR code up on the screen there. Feel free to scan that. There will be a few polls and questions throughout the session, so feel free to engage in those. Yeah, please do if you can. If you've already been to a session, I think it should be the same as before. If it's still open in your browser, just switch to the ArcGIS Online session and you should be good to go. Cool, quick overview of what's going to happen today. First up, we've got a quick intro to what is ArcGIS Online. Hopefully most of you are familiar with what it is, but for those that aren't, I'll give you a quick rundown. We've got some new capabilities. You saw a few of them in this morning's session, but we'll go into a little bit more detail into a wider range of new capabilities, as well as, I guess, a little bit more deeper dive into them. We've then got some apps for engagement from Ed and potentially Julian on the left there, going into, I guess, which app is best for me and how do I choose the right one to suit my needs. And then we've got Ryan coming in with some, what is scalability and I guess how it is used in a couple of projects. And then finally, a Q&A. Like I said, I don't want to run over time because I'm very aware we are the ones standing in front of beers tonight, so we'll try to keep time. Cool, so an overview. What is ArcGIS Online? Like I said, hopefully most of you are aware, but essentially, it's an online SaaS platform that allows you to make maps, analyze data, share and collaborate those maps and data with others as well, and hopefully show it in a nicely appealing visual way. It allows, I guess, GIS-specific workflows as well, so it's not just maps and apps, it's the whole, I guess, package of workflows as well. And there are a range of different applications in which we share that data out. That could be through accessing it through Pro, through some of the field apps that you saw this morning, plus all of the various web applications that we're going to take a look at today as well. Plus APIs and SDKs if you're that way inclined. And one final point is the data, I guess, is stored in your own private cloud as well. So your own ArcGIS Online instance is completely controlled by you. You control the data where it goes, who's it shared to, essentially, yeah, full control, but it's not managed by you yourself. A couple of those key capabilities, so mapping and visualization is our core and definitely our strength. Data collection and management, so actually being able to go out into the field, collect new data, store it in the appropriate fashion in your own schema that you choose. Field operations, so like I mentioned, sending your team out to the field to actually collect that data in the first place. Spatial data and spatial science, data science and spatial analysis. There are elements of that using ArcGIS Pro, which hopefully some of you saw just before. But using that content that's stored up in ArcGIS Online to then perform your own analysis on. So hopefully you have that one source of truth that you're then accessing in different ways. Increasingly, it's becoming more 3D GIS. You saw some cool examples this morning in ways that 3D is becoming more and more integrated inside of the platform. So things like integrated meshes, 3D object layers, BIM and CAD data like you saw this morning as well. And finally, the increasing realm of imagery and remote sensing. Balaban gave some great demonstrations this morning on ways that you can share up that weather data, which was an imagery layer or multi-dimensional data. And this is becoming more and more a core product of ArcGIS Online as well, so some exciting things to see there. Finally, ArcGIS Online is really a collaboration platform. What I mean by that is there's a couple of main ways in which you can, I guess, share data out of the platform. Like I mentioned, it's fully secure, so you can keep it to yourself if you want to. There's ways to share it with just within your organization. There's ways to share it to groups of people that could be from your own organization and other organizations. And there's also two other forms, which is distributed collaboration, which is essentially linking up with an ArcGIS enterprise. That could be a place where you store your data on premise. You then sync that to your ArcGIS Online to then share out to the wider world, for example. And there's also partner collaboration, which is a ArcGIS Online specific feature, I believe. And that's essentially having two trusted organizations and then sharing data in two ways between each other. So say there's two engineering firms working on the same roading project. They both want to update data at the same time and see that single source of truth. But I'm not going to go too much into collaboration. If you want to find out more, there's a specific session tomorrow with the man over there, Ed, where he'll be going through a full hour of the various workflows on that. Cool. So I said we're going to be doing some Slido interaction. If you haven't yet, the code's still up there, so scan right now. But the question for you all is, how many of you are using the new map viewer? I'd be keen to hear what you have to say. So I'll give you a minute or two to fill that out now, and hopefully we can show some live results in a second as well. So feel free to fill it out. Cool, so we've got 71 responses already. And it's looking like a high proportion of you are using it, which is good to see. Awesome. Well then, hopefully this next section will be good news to you. And for the 21% of people that aren't using it yet, and the 8% that, 21% that would like to use it, and the 8% that aren't, hopefully this next section can convince you to start using it. So we have a quick technology update on the map viewer. Real quickly, I'm just going to go through, I guess, what's been included in the past, and then we have some demonstrations from Ashley on those specific features. But just to get started, a few enhancements that have come in the map viewer since 2019 when it was first introduced. Just a few highlights, things like dot density mapping, so that really performant dot maps that you can then zoom in and out of and show that symbology in different ways. Things like map rotation, improved printing, things that aren't necessarily available in the current or old now map viewer. Things like group layers, a highly requested feature that is now in the map viewer that just helps to organize that vast amount of content. Cluster labeling, layer blending, some of that cool symbology that we saw this morning and we'll see some more of. Vector symbols is definitely one that's a good enhancement. And last year, things like sketch, so being able to quickly do some SketchUps and map notes in the map viewer itself. More integration with OGC layers, so if you do have organizations that you work with or people within your own organization that are using other forms of software, you can bring that data into the map viewer and work with it directly. Things like floor-aware maps as well, so the increasing world of indoor mapping, you can now work with that data inside of the map viewer as well. What's new? I'm not going to go too much into this because we're going to show it, but charts renderers, pie charts, heat mapping, smart mapping of OGC layers. Yeah, we're going to show some of these. And we're very aware that the two map viewers are still not quite, I guess, on parity, and that is definitely the work of the Esri team to get towards parity. So there's a few things still to come to the new map viewer, things like analysis, a very highly requested feature. We do have a sneak peek of that tomorrow in the road ahead, so make sure you come along to that. Things like related records, being able to access those in the map viewer, simply just dragging and dropping files into the map, and also calculating fields and stream layers coming in from live data sources as well. Don't worry, if there's 29% of people that are still using the old map viewer, it's not going anywhere. It's staying around at least until there is parity with the new map viewer. And you are still able to configure in your settings if you want to open up data from that old map viewer, you still can. And that, like I said, that'll be around for a while. If you do want to start using map viewer, you can still use your old maps, so simply just open them up. It'll give you the option to open them in the new map viewer, and then you're good to go from there. Cool. Smart mapping. So you saw some demos this morning of some cool symbology. Ashley gave a great demo of loading in some data, picking an attribute. It then suggests a whole bunch of different styles based on the data that you added. Now these defaults are there by default, and it depends on the type, the attribute that you select, whether it's number, text fields, multiple text fields, for example. And what's great about these is it really quickly enables you to start interacting with the data and exploring it, visualizing it in different ways. What's great about it is it also leverages the new JavaScript API. So when you do want to make some changes, such as sliding the histogram to move the data that you want to show, that's really quick and performant, so you can really quickly get to the details that you need. And finally, just a couple of mapping tips for you. Like I said, there's lots of different styles. Try them. If you do have the time, just try a few different styles, and particularly around changing base maps as well. So say you found a nice style that you like, just browse through those different base maps that Weird Eagle provide, as well as you can find in the Living Atlas as well. Make your polygon lines thinner. You can see that example in the middle there. The one on the left has got those chunky bold lines. The one on the right looks a little bit cleaner, just a little one. Use the automatically adjusted sizes and outlines, and emphasize values using that transparency. So on the bottom example there, you can see a little bit of transparency as you move that histogram. It really helps to emphasize the data that you want to show off. With that, we have some demonstrations, which I will pass to Ashley.
Thanks, James. So I'm going to go over some more new features in Map Viewer to help you guys create more engaging visualizations within your maps. So first, with this update, pie charts can now be added and configured. So this is joining bar charts, line charts, histograms, and scatter plots. And charts are very useful to help you uncover patterns, trends, and relationships in your data. So following on from the plenary demo of the New Zealand land cover across major urban areas, I will quickly show you how to add a pie chart. So choosing some specific fields, I can add the 3 land covers from earlier. And then from there, you can format the data slices, the labels, legend, and overall donut size. And here I'm changing the chart title to make it more meaningful as well. And surprisingly, given this only represents major urban areas in New Zealand, there is more tree coverage and grassland combined than there is built-up areas. So another new feature in Map Viewer, you can now visualize and customize multi-layer vector symbols for points, lines, and polygons in Map Viewer using symbol layers. So you previously had the ability to do this in ArcGIS Pro, and then you had to publish it onto AGO. But now these can be customized without having to leave your web browser. Here I have some skill points from the Living Atlas, and I've displayed all the primary, intermediate, and secondary skills in New Zealand. From the symbol style drop-down, there are many new symbol categories to choose from. And choosing point of interest, the number of symbol markers to choose from are endless. I can change the color of the vector marker, and then also change the color of the background vector marker, all with just a few clicks. And this is a great new update that allows you to style each component of a multi-layer symbol independently. Following on with the same demo, I have added the New Zealand School Enrolment Zones, also from the Living Atlas, and applied different hatch fills for the different school types and their zones. So I touched on the hatch fills briefly in the plenary for the land cover demo. But this is another example of how using different multi-layer polygon fills can enhance your polygons. And hatch fills are a very good way to display overlapping polygons without losing much detail. You can customize the degree of density, the patterns, and colors. And now for polygons showing certain features, you can also fill a polygon with different landscape markers. And these can be either symmetrical or random. You also have the option to customize the density and saturation of these markers as well. Now, probably the coolest feature added recently in Map Viewer is the Flow Smart mapping style, which we saw earlier in the imagery demo. And this allows you to display vector field data in imagery layers using animated streamlines and wavefronts to represent direction and magnitude. So this is ideal for displaying ocean or wind currents as waves or streamlines, and I'll quickly show you how to do this. So here I have the ocean currents layer from the Living Atlas, and I can change the style to flow. And with this, you have the option to change many parameters, such as the direction, which can indicate flow direction, or the length, the colors, and speed of these flow lines to represent the magnitude of your current. And as we saw earlier, flow can also be combined with other layer effects, such as bloom, to create an expressive animation. And as a default, when a dark base map is chosen, bloom is automatically applied. And then bringing in the sea temperature layer also from Living Atlas, I can change the blend mode to pull the symbology through my map. And then, as a result, I have a really cool animation of the ocean currents represented by the temperature of the water. And the last feature that I want to quickly show is the improved heat mapping capabilities. Heat map style has now been improved to support faster and smoother transitions as you move around the map. Here I have the data from the Predator-Free Port Hills initiative, and displayed on my map are all the catches found in the placed traps. Showing you some of the new capabilities, I can apply a heat map to all the catches layer, and then change the color amp to represent the dark background. And as you may know, the heat map regenerates at different zoom levels. But now a new feature, the heat map can be locked. So this prevents regeneration each time the zoom level changes. Other new updates include the support of filtering, labels, and pop-ups. And you can now apply filtered feature effects to emphasize certain areas. So here I am emphasizing where possums have been caught. From here, we can also quickly make an instant app with just a few clicks. Instant apps help you quickly transform any 2D or 3D maps into an app. And just to highlight a new feature in Instant Apps, so on the home page there is now a Suggestions side panel under the Create tab. After launching Instant Apps from your web map in Map Viewer, you can use it to answer a few questions, which filters down app choices based on your answers. It starts with a broad question asking about the general goal for your app, and then the questions narrow down based on your previous responses. So these suggestions are there to guide you to a more refined set of app choices, making your choice even easier. And introduced recently, there is a new instant app called Exhibit, which is a replacement for Map Viewer Classic presentations. It allows you to deliver a presentation that you can use to tell a story, using interactive slides and each with the option to set different map extents and other settings. So here I have one that I made earlier, following on from the Predator-Free Port Hills initiative. And so this showcases
sorry. There we go.
Thank you. So here's one I made earlier, following on from the Predator-Free Port Hills initiative. And so this showcases the top 3 species that have been caught in this initiative. So slides can be created during app configuration or imported from bookmarks in your map. And here I have displayed where the initial traps have been placed, symbolized by the different trap types. And with each slide, you can also store unique layer visibility settings, base map changes, and pop-up statuses. So for the rest of my story, I have quickly put in heat maps of where the rats, the mice, and possums have been caught. And these are all created using the feature filter effect from before. And so this template also provides a play button, which gives the user to automatically play the slideshow when opening the app. And then there's also an option to export a slide as a PDF or by copying a direct URL. And so that's everything from me. Back to you, James.
Sweet, thank you, Ashley. I'll quickly relaunch this. Oh, you guys don't want my notes. Cool, there we go. Start from the start. Cool. All right. I've got one more demo for you as well, once I get there. Sorry, bear with me. One more. Nice. All right, I mentioned OGC layers earlier, and this is a great new update for, particularly when there's not any Esri layers, Esri-specific format layers available for you to access the data services. So example here, I've got a New Zealand business demography statistics in February 2020 from Stats NZ. So if you go ahead and log into their website, it gives you access to all of the different web feature services that they have available on their site. One of them is a WFS feed. You can go ahead and quickly copy that link. And when you go to the map viewer now and go to add a layer, you'll see a whole range of different options that some of them are new, things like tile layers, root layers, sketch layers, GeoJSON layers, and all these OGC options at the bottom there as well. So if I go ahead and add that WFS layer, I can now start to do things with it, whereas previously I would not have been able to. So when it first loads in, obviously it's not a very useful orange blob, but what is available to us now is smart mapping. So we can actually change the style of this OGC layer to make it our own and show the things that we want to show. So in this case, I want to bring in the total employee count here in Christchurch, and I want to start to visualize that and make it a little bit more interesting, particularly pulling out areas where the employees are actually based. So figure out the work areas of Christchurch, essentially. So like I mentioned earlier, there's the histogram that you can start to quickly visualize and toggle data. Notice how quickly it changes using that new JavaScript API. And as always, there's these new feature-specific effects that you can apply to your data. The bloom one keeps coming up a lot. I like it. I'm going to keep using it. I'm sorry. It really highlights your data. So you can see on the left-hand side there, and in the CBD, that's where the majority of workers are based. If you quickly zoom around the whole country, you can see where the work areas are around the whole country as well, loaded in our map. So that's just one example of how you can quickly start to use that OGC data and make it your own. Cool. And I'll now have to hand off to Ryan, who's got some updates on notebooks and Arcade.
Cool. I'll pop over here, I guess. Okay. Cool, kia ora everyone. So I'll keep this stuff relatively brief, and I'm going to keep it brief because if you're interested in Arcade and notebooks, I suggest you come along to the developer session on Thursday morning though, sorry, but yeah, definitely look at coming along to that. In terms of what's new though, I want to just touch on a couple of things. So Arcade, if you're not familiar with what it is, I definitely encourage you to become familiar with it. It's an expression language that gives you flexibility to create custom content across the platform, and my line for what's new is just basically an increased presence across the ArcGIS system. So as I mentioned on the session on the developer one, I'll be going into how it can be used in field maps, so expanding on what Julian showed in plenary, as well as within ArcGIS dashboards. Notebooks, so Baldovane did show some of these in plenary as well before. A couple of key things I want to show. It's not necessarily new, but it's really useful, and that's the ability to schedule your notebooks. So you can write your Python script, for example. If anyone was in the ag session prior to this, I showed a workflow there. It's really beneficial to automate these things and have them running on a schedule so I'm not having to come and check them. So another example for that would be like a backup of your hosted feature services, running that on a weekly schedule. Code snippets is the new thing that I want to touch on. So I've got a quick demonstration for that. Basically, what I want to highlight here is the level to entry is being lowered constantly for using Python and using notebooks throughout the platform. So now not only are they in ArcGIS Online, if I hit go on this, sorry, it's pre-recorded, the illusion's being lifted, is if I go to my code snippet section, there is a list of things here that may be of use to you. So I recommend you go have a look through them. So if I filter this down to the data science and analytics one, there's an option here to convert a feature layer to a spatial enabled data frame, as well as lots of other ones that might be of interest. So all I need to do is add it to my map, and it pre-populates a bit of code in there that I can just run. If you're familiar with Python, it basically puts it in as a function. So you run that, and then I can just grab the name of the function and basically do what it tells me to do. Great thing about it is it's got great error handling, all that sort of content is there. Now, to show how this works, so this is converting a feature layer to a spatial enabled data frame. I've gone to the Living Atlas, and I am grabbing the Te Ao Māori place names. So this has been published by a curator, which isn't us, but it's still got its way into the Living Atlas. So there's some content here. So that's Andrew Douglas Clifford who's published this one. So once again, search content, hit go, add it into my map. I don't actually have to really do much coding here at this point. So then I just grab my definition, or my function, sorry, that I've created above, and can create a variable and basically run it as I go. So I'm creating a pandas data frame. If that doesn't make sense to you, that's fine. It is a sort of pretty widely used way of structuring data when using Python, really efficient for sort of any sort of analysis. So as simple as that, I've taken my feature layer and I've got it now in a spatially enabled data frame. So there's a few more in here. I can't remember how long this video is. Well, I do. But basically, there's one more I'll showcase in here, which is taking that and then plotting it on a map. So there's lots of different examples. I implore you to have a look at what's available. And yeah, as I said at the start, it's all about lowering that barrier to entry for using Python across the platform. So this one's a bit bigger. Obviously not going into what the code's actually doing here, because that would be the most exciting demo in the world. So just pulling in the layer from before, and you'll see really quickly that just plots a nice map below. And like that, I've got some points on a map. So there you go. Cool. Thank you, James.
Sweet. Thank you for that, Ryan. Cool. Last bit of talking from me before I hand off to the other side of the stage over here. So a couple of quality of life updates for you. I'm assuming most of you in the crowd are at least users of ArcGIS Online. Hopefully some of you in the crowd are even administrators of your own organizations. So hopefully some of these updates might, apply to you. Cool. The first one is feature layer previews and sub-searching of layers. So if you next log into ArcGIS Online and look at your content section, you'll notice a little arrow next to your feature layers. If you go ahead and click that, you'll see a new interface pop up. And what you can do here is start to interrogate the individual attributes within that feature layer itself. So say you want to search for some climate change data or some stats data, and you want to make sure that before you add it to your map, it's got the attributes that you need to start doing your analysis or mapping. You can quickly do that here, instead of going through the map viewer, going through the attribute table, and then finally finding the data you want. So hopefully this saves some time. If your feature layer has multiple sub-layers, you can also see those sub-layers in here and do the same thing, access the attributes and make sure it's got the right stuff for you. Also sub-layer searching. So when you search for content, in this case it's California, or it could be New Zealand, it could be Kiwis, whatever it is. In that search box, we'll also search through the sub-layers within that to make sure that the criteria meets that. And you'll see a little match section showing the exact sub-layers that meets your search. That just kind of speeds things up to make sure it pulls out the right things for you. Cool. Number 2, member categories. This was introduced in March of this year. Essentially, you can think of member categories as a way of setting hierarchies to groups of people. That could be, in this example, I've got my team, so technical solutions team. That groups all the technical solutions team into that category. You can also set hierarchies, so we can set it up to only see administrators. It could even be by user type, for example. You can have up to 200 different categories within your organization, and each member can have up to 20 categories assigned to them. So how is this useful to me? So number one, categorizing members based on their roles and responsibilities, e.g. interns, inspection workers, EM responders. So let's take the example of an intern. You've got a whole 10 new interns for the summer. You've added them all at once and you've given them the category of intern. You can quickly filter to that category, show all of their users, and then do mass updates all at once. So say you want to give them all ArcGIS Pro licenses and you want to assign them all 200 credits. You can do that really quickly with the use of categories. On the EM example, maybe you want to add all EM responders to a certain response group. You can do that if you have that category assigned. Managing the chaos when people leave. Say that same intern group's now finished summer. You want to remove them all from the organization, a pretty important part of any administrative process in ArcGIS Online. Do the same process, filter to the category, take all the licenses away, and then kick them out of the group. Also for members, so if you're not necessarily an administrative organization, you can still use member categories to filter your organization, again, based on teams or specific jobs you might have. And then if you want to, maybe you're working on the same project as a whole group of people, add them all to your group all at once. And finally, just if you are curious, browsing around your ArcGIS Online organization, you want to see a whole bunch of contractors you might have on hand, browse to that category, see what content they've been making, be nosy. Cool, and the last third update of quality of life is the new view layer workflows. For those that aren't familiar with view layers, it's essentially a way to have a source feature layer and then share out a view. It could be a filtered view, so say you have some trapping data and you only want to share out a specific location, you can do that with a view layer, but still reference that source layer so it's constantly updated. What's new here is you can define, is a new interface essentially. It allows you to define the view layer via the map, so you can choose the individual layer that you want to share as a view layer, so if you have a feature layer with multiple sub-layers. There's a new interface to define that view. So you can do things like add filtering to it if you have a specific attribute you want to filter to. You can define the area of interest, so in this case I've got some COVID data and I just want to share out the South Island data. So I'll just define that area of interest there. You can see that it's highlighted and the rest is grayed out. And in this case, I want to take out some data that I don't want to share publicly. So in this case, I don't want to show the deceased data. That's cool. And finally, just defining a name for your data, as always. But the interesting part is this replace the source of the view layer. If any of you are familiar with field workflows where you maybe have a survey data feature layer, and you've got a view of that feature that you want to share out publicly or to specific teams, but then you want to go back and make changes to that survey. Previously, you would have had to delete that view every time, make the changes, republish the feature layer, recreate the view. Luckily now, you can head to the Settings tab, go to Update View. That will load up, and then at the bottom left of the screen, we now have the ability to swap the source. So in this case, I've got some COVID statistics. This current layer is for the 4th of September. I've got a new feature layer, which is the 5th of September. I just want to update that view layer with that new source to show the most current data. And that will stay in my public information map, let's say, and the data source will just change, but it will stay there and you don't need to do anything else. Cool. And that's all I have, quality of life updates. I'll now hand off to Ed and Julian to talk about apps for engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, James. I'm just wondering if we could get pod 4 up on the screen. Thank you. So there's a fair bit out there now in ArcGIS Online, and one of the biggest challenges isn't actually keeping up with the technology. It's trying to work out which tool is the best tool for the job based on the situation or use case that you're building something for. So this is a bit of a conversation that Julian and I have quite a bit. we sit in a team that luckily we get to talk to lots of customers about what they do and what they're trying to do with the technology. And I guess this comes off the back of that conversation, guiding people towards the right web app for the job and putting some simple language around it to help guide you on which app you should choose. So to start with, if we could define just one word for each of the types of apps that you can use inside ArcGIS Online, what would those words be? This is what we came up with. Being able to describe your data to someone, being able to explain your data with additional context, being able to inform based on a specific map or a specific bit of information, being able to provide a narrative or narrate against that map that you're wanting to show to perhaps a stakeholder, where maybe a little bit more explanation is needed to tell them what it's trying to show. And then finally, persuading a course of action. We want to persuade people to either do more of something or do less of something. And so each of the apps that are now available inside ArcGIS Online definitely align to each of those.
I guess where that conversation started is that you're always beginning with a map or a question. And as Ed said, there's a number of different applications available, but you're probably wanting to highlight your data in different ways, or there's a different, what's the word I'm looking for here? With every map, with every project that you're working on, you're wanting to answer different questions. And so, as Ed said, we came up with those 5 sort of key words. I think there's probably almost another one out there as well, which is maybe extending with, say, the developer capabilities that you saw this morning.
But in terms of the magic of where these words align to the groups of apps, sometimes things just line up really nicely. And we found that with each of the groups of applications, they all aligned sort of really nice to this sort of methodology that we use internally. So instant apps being the most lightweight applications, as you've seen from Ashley's demos, you can create an app in seconds, and that can communicate a map with some very basic tools around it that are actually quite powerful when used with some really neat data.
And say there's almost like a hierarchy to your methodology when you're creating an app. Like you want to configure first and customize last, and so instant apps are the easiest gateway to transform your web maps to make them shareable with a wider audience. And those configurable templates have been growing and growing in the previous years. So I guess our methodology would be instant apps would be the first approach. See if one of the templates meet your needs, but if not, then maybe check out a different application.
Yeah, exactly. And dashboards have become quite a famous tool for some of our biggest things that we've had to face in the last couple of years. The COVID dashboard seems to pop up in every second presentation you attend at these conferences, And really the purpose around that is informing on a certain issue, of which the data is a backdrop for it. So, with COVID, it's informing us how many COVID cases are out there, for example. But internally, it may be informing how many health and safety near misses you've had. It may be informing how many inspections you've been able to undertake. It's not necessarily describing them. It's producing a number and a couple of graphs to help inform what you're wanting to really people to understand very quickly. And ArcGIS dashboards are fantastic for that.
Yeah.
But then sometimes a number next to a map isn't enough. You need a little bit more text.
Yeah, just also add to dashboards there that we see them configured in a whole number of ways. Like this morning I sort of tied it to the field data capture use, and that's how they were traditionally used. But yeah, nowadays, COVID reporting, emergency management, you're involved with using a lot of dashboards there as that key sort of map on the screen to get that operational overview of what you're seeing. So yeah, we see those configured in a number of different ways, and I guess embedded as well within different forms of applications too.
Yeah, too right.
I'm not sure if you wanted to, story maps was
yeah, so, story maps, when you need to say more words than you need to describe something, or maybe you want to tell a bit of a story of which a map is just a small component amongst images and media and audio. We see story maps used for all sorts of things, and looking at some of the entries that have come through already for the competition that ends at 7 o'clock tonight, just to remind you, for a trip to San Diego if you win. there's no limit to what you can put into a story map. We've seen lots and lots of really interesting use cases for them, even instruction manuals on how to use ArcGIS Online. That's a favourite for me. But then, we've gone through applications which are very much based on selecting a pre-defined template. Going into the app builders, that's where really all the rules are out the window. The demos that Lauren showed in the plenary today, and some of the applications that Ryan's created using, either no code all the way to quite a lot of coding, really allows you to take whatever you want and place it on the page how you need to, and multiple pages as well.
Yeah, like we've seen Experience Builder be used as that sort of mapping interface or portal, but likewise Lauren sort of showed, excuse I suppose the pun with the name, but it's an experience. It's like that narrative and mapping capability all wrapped into one sort of bundle, or even as a website. Like I believe the agenda that you're using today as well is also built using Experience Builder. So it's a very configurable tool and extendable as well. So yeah, you've got a lot of power in your hands, but with great power also comes great responsibility. That I guess the more power you have, the more challenging it can be to sort of craft that application.
And with great power, it's often coming with persuading people to a different action that they need to take. And that's where ArcGIS Hub we've seen traditionally used as an open data portal, but now being configured for different use cases around a hub, which is for a certain initiative. So I think with Predator Free, that's a classic one where we see a hub almost as the landing page to all these other sorts of apps, but it's sort of that constant homepage for people to go to, where key content that you want to surface can be put on that homepage that people can be clicking on, but also filling out surveys, participating in an initiative, taking action. Hub is a tool that, it's interesting, it's been a bit of there was initial interest and then it sort of dissipated for a bit, but now we see it sort of rising up again as quite a popular choice for all sorts of different things.
Yeah. I'd say, and I think one thing that's pretty clear, and it's probably where our question came from in the first place, is that which app do I choose? Because there's so much overlap between them nowadays as well. I guess it's not a question, it's not an answer a question you can just answer like that. You sort of need to go into the requirements of what it is you're hoping to achieve and work backwards from there. I guess Hub we've seen a bit more as a website or a landing page. Experience Builder, you could likewise do the same thing, but I guess it's just got a bit more flexibility there. I think one other, just adding to the complexity again of what other applications are out there to display your geospatial information, like there's the likes of local maps that you saw this morning. There's also the likes of your ArcGIS Online homepage as well, that we see a lot of organizations use as their one-stop shop to access all their key geospatial information. So I suppose that just shows you how many options there are. I suppose it doesn't answer the question anymore so far. Yeah,
and that final factor is all of these apps require spare time on your part or to have an opportunity to create them. Just to show the hands in the audience, who has created an instant app?
Awesome.
What about a dashboard? Oh, who hasn't, right? An app builder, so web app builder or experience builder? Yeah?
Plenty.
How about a story map?
I'm expecting everyone's hands up to...
Yeah, some people don't want a trip to San Diego, I get it. And then finally a hub site. Who's created a hub site?
Okay. It's still, quite a few.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so with Esri, there are always 10 ways to do one thing. But going back to these key phrases of, what is that key question or that key intent of your product can help to guide you to where you need to. So feel free to take a photo of this if you think it'd be helpful for your purposes. But with that, thanks for the chat. And we'll hand back over to the right-hand side with James Wright.
Sweet. One more question for you guys. Sharing screen one, please. Cool. So if you haven't yet, or you've still got it saved in your browser, open up Slido again, and you can choose which feature you're most looking forward to trying. It could be based on what you're most interested in, or who gave the best demo, whatever you want. You can choose multiple, and I'd be keen to to see what you think. Cool. Looks like Ryan's up there with Arcade and Python as well. Smart mapping styles. Cool. All right, I'll let that run for a while and we'll come back to it after the next section. But thanks for participating. Smart mapping's taken the win so far. I rate that. Cool. I'll hand off to Ryan now to talk a little bit about viral maps, what they are, and a case study as well, right?
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks for that, James. Can I get number 3 on the big screen? Sweet. Thank you. All right. Sharing the screen on the big stage is new for me, so bear with me. These guys have all had practice this morning. Okay, so I want to just cover off some best practice for sharing your content virally, but also just general best practice stuff for sharing it publicly. So yeah, hopefully some messages in here will apply to all of you, as you're all in here because you're using ArcGIS Online, or intending on, and no doubt at some stage we'll want to get the most performance out of your applications. So a couple of key things I would be suggesting to just run yourself through a bit of a checklist. First one being define what your message is. In my role, I see a lot of what I would refer to as mapzillas, and that's sort of what we, just a map that's got too many layers in it. And we'll get into this into a little bit more detail, but basically the more information you're trying to display, the less performant that's going to be, right? Because you're trying to load in more data. It's as simple as that. So if you can and where you can, limit down the amount of data. Using tools like local maps have this ability to add data in, but even a lot of the out-of-the-box apps have that ability to let users add data in as they need it. Decide who your audience is and what you're trying to communicate. Simplify that message down as much as possible. My last point is basically that. Create a simple application for a single purpose where possible, and that's going to help these things be as performant as possible. Cool. So appropriately share your data. How do you intend for your audience to interact with your map? Now that's a pretty big question, but hopefully as we're building these applications that we're going to be sharing publicly, we have that in mind. Do we need users to edit data? Is it like public data collection? Are we just wanting to see things? Do they need to query it and pop up and see information about that specific thing? So answering those questions sort of help us along our decision tree of how we should publish our data. Now, there are, as we've covered, a lot of different ways of publishing that. Say if we're not updating our data regularly and they just need to be able to visualize that. I think of our application I saw with tsunami zones. Now, that's not data that's changing every day, week, or month. It's relatively stagnant or static. So that actually is well suited for a vector tile layer. It's going to be really quick, performant to load in the map. And that's the last point down there, is how often is it updated. So one thing we'll hear a lot, and I hear a lot with, when I'm working with my customers, is around this idea of why you'd be using ArcGIS Online. And one of the key reasons I often give is because it's scalable. But around what that actually means, I'm sure we can all sort of relate to the, explaining what you do in GIS, and it's quite a difficult thing to describe. Well, I found myself in a similar position telling my flatmate that I was going to be giving a presentation on ArcGIS Online scalability, and I could tell that I lost her about 5 sentences in. So what I did at that moment in time was gave her an analogy and decided I quite liked it, so I've stuck with it to share with you today. So imagine you are hungry and you want food now. Right? The quickest way for you to get food is going to be for you to go to your house, look in your pantry, and acquire some food. Right? Quickest way possible. The next quickest way is you leave your house, go outside, but you've just got your slippers on and you're going down to the local dairy and grabbing, the pie that's in the pie warmer. Right? It's taking a bit more time, but it's still pretty quick, and you often have, a few more dairies near your house, especially if you live in a city. And then finally, you can go to the supermarket and get your food there. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is there's this sort of chain of, okay, if you've got things close to you, it's going to be really quick. The further away, it's going to take you more time and more effort to go get that food. So keeping that frame in mind when we're talking about ArcGIS Online scalability, and specifically in this example as well, case control, we're making a query to our feature layer. So here, You're loading in data into your map. You've clicked on a feature, you're returning a pop-up, right? You're hungry and you need food. The quickest thing would be to go and see your browser cache. Is that data already there and can it be returned? If it is, awesome. Really quick, really effective and efficient. If not, we've got this thing called the CDN cache. Now this is the Content Delivery Network cache. Basically this is sort of an intermediate stage in between you and the database. And it is a global network of basically content delivery, and it sort of acts as our dairy. It's not our database, not our supermarket, our provider of our potatoes and carrots, but it is there, and it's a more sort of scaled down, well, sorry, it's probably the wrong word to use in this talk, but a filtered down version of our database, right? It's specific to certain things. There's another level to this that I didn't have the best analogy for in my supermarket example, but that is our feature tile cache. So touching on the new map viewer, this sort of thing is only available to us using the new JavaScript API. So if we're using the old map viewer, we're not going to be returning our feature data as tile caches, which is far more efficient in the first place as well. And lastly, if all those conditions, so it's not in our browser cache, it's not in our CDN, there's not a tile cache, we'll go and query our database. So when we're going down this workflow, one thing I want to point out is that we can control access to the dairy or the CDN cache. So we want to be making sure when we're sharing apps publicly that we're not making our users request the database, right? Because that is not only going to be more time intensive for the users, but it's going to, we talk about, one thing I want to touch on here actually, sorry, is the idea of scalability. So you do have to bear in mind ArcGIS Online will scale. So with each request going to that database, if this was your own environment, if you're using ArcGIS Enterprise, one thing you've got to bear in mind is that that has a limited amount of resources, right? You might have, if you're lucky enough, if you're in a big organization, to have someone sitting there, plugging extra, resources to that as it's needed. But quite often that's not the case, and even if you are, that's a costly endeavor, right? ArcGIS Online has this amazing ability where what we can do is, add a whole new wing to the supermarket or open up new checkouts is probably a better example, right? So that will happen and it will scale. But when we're talking about viral apps, the less that we're needing to do that, the better. So this is why I have this diagram up. Yes, ArcGIS Online will scale. That supermarket will open up new checkouts as is and when is it's needed. But if we can limit the amount of traffic that actually needs to hit that, the better. Does that make sense to everyone? Does my supermarket analogy make sense? Great, thank you. Cool, so I'm going to give a demo of basically how we can give access to that dairy or the CDN. So what I have is, are we still seeing my screen? Cool. Is I created 100,000 points. So to prove that this is actually 100,000 points, if I go to my data tab, there is 100,000 points in this table. Now, it is only points, but it will still illustrate my reasoning here. So a couple of key things. In this case, this has not been shared publicly. And if I go to my settings, there's a couple of key things I've not kept in mind. I've got editing enabled, so I'm giving people access to edit this. And what you'll notice when that's the case is that I don't have this setting down here for cache control, right? It's not there. So now when I go to my map, and I've just loaded this layer into my map, I'm going to open up my developer tools. So if I go to developer tools and hit the network tab and just refresh my page now. So I'm going to put a filter in for my developer tools to look for anything that's just query. And I've got a couple of other things in here, like disabling the browser cache, just to sort of illustrate some points here. So as this loads in, what you'll notice is a slew of queries coming through. Right? So there's a whole lot of queries. As I pan and interact with my map, and one thing you may have noticed there is the performance. Now, I will say it's still pretty quick. With each new iteration of ArcGIS Online and the JavaScript 4 API, the loading of these feature tiles is getting far quicker. But we can still make it quicker than this, right? So if I interact with this map, you'll notice that it's pretty slow. Each time it's requesting the database and pulling back that data, right? And I can check that by, if I look at one of these queries, I can see this text here under my X cache saying that it's missed from CloudFront, right? What that's telling me as I'm configuring the app that's going to go viral, is that basically we're not utilizing that dairy, we're not utilizing the CDN, and I can see that in how my data is interacting. It's still pretty quick, but it could definitely be quicker. So all I've done is created a hosted view of that. Now, James touched on this before. There's new configuration options for the hosted view. So this is all this is here. It's a hosted view. It is shared publicly. So it's the same data, but shared publicly. And if I go to my settings, and I scroll down here, editing is disabled, and I've got this cache control. Now, one thing I mentioned when I had my slides up before was how often is your data updating? Now, the CDN cache will refresh based on an interval that you can define. So I've said here an hour. So I know that this data is not being updated often. So what that means is that intermediate stage, or my dairy, my CDN, is going to hold that data for an hour and then refresh it out, right? So if you are expecting your data to update more frequently, you can filter this down to 5 or even 30 seconds now. Well, I didn't know that. I thought it was 5 minutes. So that does give you more control over that, but bear in mind with that will become every 30 seconds that data is need to go back to the database and query, right? So there is performance gains to be had if you know your data is not being updated that regularly. But with all that being said, let's see this actually in action. So I've got the exact same data in here. Let's refresh my map again. So I've got the exact same query on my network tab. So it's calling a query. And I'm disabling my cache again. The rest of the stuff, it's still loading in, not the best, but that's all right. So what you'll see here is there's a few queries that are being made, right? And I want to just highlight that, I don't know if you can probably read that, but it does say here, refresh hit from CloudFront, which is the tech jargon word from saying, sort of miss from CloudFront. Hit from CloudFront is saying it has received that data from the CDN, which is, for me, as I'm testing this, making sure my configuration's right, is perfect. And one thing you'll notice as I zoom around my map, no more queries are being made. And that data is loading in quite a lot quicker, right? It's pretty much instant as I pan around, which is pretty cool. So hopefully that illustrates the point of how you can share data for really high performance. Basically trying to, ArcGIS Online will scale, it will grow with each request that is being made, so it's great for that. But if we're building apps, we can limit what our dependency is on it, and it makes our apps far more performant. So with all that being said, I've got one quick user story to talk about. Am I last? Am I last to go? Oh, we don't have time. Good. Yeah. Cool. All right. Cool. So here so we've obviously talked about COVID a bit. Over the vaccination rollout, we were engaged by Ministry of Health and the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to create a map that illustrated the vaccination rates around the country. So you may have seen this app, potentially. It did go somewhat viral, because that's why I'm talking about it here. So what this app was, there's a quick image of it, and I'll give a quick showcase for this, is the intention of this app was to show, your location, your vaccination rate for your SA2, so your statistical area 2, your DHB, and your, I think it was TA was the other category we had. So got some statistics around this. So we created this app using ArcGIS Online, chose to host the data in ArcGIS Online. Thankfully, Ministry of Health wanted this data to be public and accessible for anyone else to sort of pull it down and use it wherever they wanted as well, which also gave us the benefits of ArcGIS Online, so all of that scalability I was talking about before. So it has had over 800,000 page views since it was launched. On its first day of being launched, it got 75,000 page views, and the average amount of time people were spending on this was about 3.5 minutes. So for me, this really, especially those last 2 points, really illustrates the importance for when we were configuring this data to make sure that we were utilizing that CDN, that I was making sure that people are going to be on this page for a while, they'll be panning around, so we want to make sure the interaction with it is as seamless and as smooth as possible. Once they load that data in the first time, and they've queried it from the database, we want it to be really crisp and efficient for them. So put this in there, good thing it was in ArcGIS Online. We didn't have any issues with this application, it didn't go down. The only thing that did cause a slight issue with it, as it was shared publicly, was on the DPMC website itself, but nothing to do with the actual application. Cool, so I guess since I've talked about it, I'll give a quick demo. So here we are. It is still live, so if you are curious about your vaccination rates around you, you can come to the news and data page and data and statistics, and then on there is a map of the COVID thing. So if you scroll down, oops, scroll down the map. So you may just, I guess I'll touch on this while I'm looking at it. This is a slightly different interface. This is a custom application that's been embedded in a website. So it's actually just part of the website's code. It's not a instant app. It's not a dashboard. That was because we had quite specific use or requirements from Ministry of Health here. But just to quickly show you how you can do this, you put in your address and it's going to use your location. So I can see here in the Canterbury DHB, 94.5% of people have their first dose. Second dose is 93.5%, and booster, we drop off quite significantly at 76%. I can drop down to statistical area 2, and it was automatically zoomed to, and hopefully what you're seeing here is a pretty good performing app that's quick and responsive for a user. I can pan around and see that whatever this suburb here is pretty good, 92.5% on their booster. So yeah, go have a look at it, test it, tell me if you don't think it's that performant, because hopefully it is, and that's me.
Sweet, thanks Ryan. Cool, that's pretty much wrapped up. If you can share screen 1, please. Pretty much wrapped up all of our content we had for you today. We've got one more poll that we're interested in hearing from you again, and that is, what features would you like to see in ArcGIS Online? Now, we don't directly have the power to implement that, but we can definitely share feedback, and we're definitely interested ourselves as a team, even if it's something we want to show more of in the future as well. So go ahead and fill it out. We'll post the results after this information slide. So the benefit of us going on the first day is that we can point to all the other sessions that are going on throughout the week. We've kind of touched on a load of different subjects here. And here are a few different sessions relating to ArcGIS Online. If you want to find out more about mobile apps with Julian over there, head along tomorrow at 11:15. Collaboration patterns, like I mentioned with Ed. Enterprise, if you want to jump the fence and go to your own private world. Developers with Ryan, yeah?
Part of the panel.
Part of the panel. If you want to learn about more imageries in ArcGIS Online, come along on Thursday. And 3D content and spatial analysis and data science on Thursday. Cool. And the results of those, what features you want to see. No one's put anything in. Huh? Maybe it needs a refresh. Or you just got bored and want to go for a drink.
If you do have any suggestions, the ArcGIS Ideas page would be a good place to go. I think we've been seeing of late that Esri have been listening to feedback, and a lot of the new features have been coming directly from users. So the ArcGIS Ideas and Esri community pages would be a good place. Or come and talk to us as well. We'd love to hear what would be helpful for the work that you do. So
Even if it's what you don't want in ArcGIS Online, we'd be happy to hear that. So.
Cool. All right. So we've got 10 minutes left. We've got time for a little bit of questions. So hopefully you've sent through those questions in Slido. Can maybe one of the team take a look at that as well, just to filter through some questions and approve them. But the first one on, do forms built in Map Viewer flow through to Arc field maps on mobile? Or do you still need to develop forms within field maps, or a standalone? We didn't directly show that today, but in this morning's session on field maps, if you configure forms in the new map viewer, they will correspond to field maps and vice versa. So you don't need to do your editing in one place. Don't need to duplicate effort. Are flow direction and other style features in AGOL demo available in Enterprise 10.9.1? Anyone know the answer to that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So what you'll typically see with ArcGIS Online is they almost test out the capability, and then you'll see it come into Enterprise sort of a version or two later. So currently those really awesome windy graphics, you can't quite do in your Enterprise just yet. But keep an eye on the What's New pages, because I'd expect that it'll come across.
Cool, thanks Ed. Which functionality is missing from the new map viewer that was in Classic? The main one being analysis, we mentioned earlier.
Related records.
Related records. I have a slide, I can't remember what else there was. Some other things. I'll post a response to these as well after the session as well. What's the difference between Hub and Experience Builder? Maybe one of you guys can take that.
Oh, that's a curly one. That's a curly one. Yeah, so traditionally, as Ed mentioned, Hub was traditionally an open data, uses an open data site. It sort of was founded based on the open data technology, but it sort of evolved from there. And that, yeah, we commonly see it used as websites or landing pages where perhaps you're a small organization where you don't have a web development team, and you as a GIS professional may want to build your own website using tools that you've already got access to. And so Hub would be a good option there, allowing you to easily bring in your GIS content from ArcGIS Online into Hub. Hub's also got capabilities with its premium module, which allow you to, I suppose, collaborate in a two-way engagement where you're enabling a community of users with ArcGIS Online usernames. So essentially creating your own trusted team of crowdsourcers. So that's one reason why you may use Hub. One reason I use Hub is that it's sort of got built-in authentication to ArcGIS Online as well. So if you want to, say, create a private landing page for a select number of users, perhaps using ArcGIS Online groups, Hub may be a good option there. Experience Builder, similar capabilities in terms of creating a landing page. But Experience Builder also has those mapping capabilities as part of its core product.
It's really focused on the map rather than anything else.
Yeah.
And when you create a Hub site, it comes with a whole lot of extra settings that you have to go through and enable, because it's really intended as a landing page versus an application that's just got a map sitting around it. But,
yeah. I'd say Hub as a website, if you're looking to build a website, for example, Hub may be a better option. It's a bit more rugged and it's designed to do that, whereas Experience Builder, yeah, it's more of a web page perhaps, or it could equally be a website. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into our thoughts there.
Can we take the question on why is it called a web app instead of a web application?
Go for it.
Yeah, too long a word.
Thanks, guys. When you share a view layer with a group, do you still have to share it to that base? Do you still have to share the base layer, sorry? Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but you can share the view layer by itself. So say you have a group of contractors you want to send out to the field with some survey forms, you can just share a view layer with specific forms and features that they need to capture, for example. Same with public sharing, things like that. Online resources for arcade expressions for different portal versions.
Yeah, I can take this one. So there's potentially two parts to this question. Yes, there will be differences between the arcade functions that you see in Enterprise versus ArcGIS Online. That is similar to what Ed was saying before. ArcGIS Online is continuously updating. Depending on when you upgrade your ArcGIS Enterprise, you'll see different functionality come through. So that is expected. If the question's more so about resources for knowing that, we could quickly bring my screen up if that's possible, or if not, if you just search the version matrix for ArcGIS Enterprise, for ArcGIS Arcade, and you'll get a screen like this. Look at that, perfect timing. So you'll get the different sort of platforms that you can get Arcade in, so Pro, Enterprise Portal, JavaScript and runtime, and the different version of Arcade. So you can sort of go through this and click on the release notes for this and see what new functionality came out of that version. So you can sort of use this as your way of pulling that information out. Sorry, is there a...
I asked that question because if I'm looking for something new, if I can use Arcade, and I'm finding something that I like to use, and then I'm finding that it's not compatible with my version, is there a website where I can, click on my particular version of Portal that will not show me the stuff?
Yeah, not exactly that I'm aware of. Maybe somewhere in this you could obviously find that information out yourself, but what I'd be suggesting you try and do and try and convince your organisation to do is upgrade to the latest version of ArcGIS Enterprise so you're using the latest tools that are out.
Cool, thanks, Brian. If you can chuck it back to screen 1 at some point. Quick question around what are OGC layers? I suppose I didn't really clarify that during my demo. But OGC stands for Open Geospatial Consortium. Getting nods? Yep. And it's shared, it's like an open data format shared by lots of different GIS mapping tools to that specific industry standard that can work between all of them. So yeah, we ingest them now.
I guess OGC is a standard, and there are formats within that standard, like WFS and WMS and WMTS and so forth.
Yep.
And so, yeah, part of the new map views functionalities are making those layers more easily accessible to be able to bring into your mapping products.
Who's excited about that, the ability to actually change the layer once you've brought it in? Yeah? Yeah, that's awesome, eh? Woo! Woo!
Cool. Got a whole load more questions here. What we got? Is the heat map lock just locking the heat map by scale, or if new data is added, does it need to be regenerated?
Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah, so it's dynamic. When you're adding new data, so long as you've got your refresh interval turned on your layer, that will update the heat mapping visualization. And it's also scale dependent as well. It's not just locked at a certain scale when you're zooming in and out. The heat map visualization will respond to that as well.
Thanks, Ed. And a couple more. When will we have the ability to get embedded code for new map viewer from new map viewer? I'm assuming that means embedding the map within a website. I'm guessing that means.
When you click is that click the share map and it generates the HTML code?
Yeah. Ryan, have you got any comments on that one?
I mean, I guess that's whenever that comes to the new map viewer, but I mean, you can relatively easily wrap it in an iframe. If that was whoever that was, I can run you through how to do that later on.
Ryan's really easy to spot in a crowd, so go ahead and chat to him on that.
And just a note, we'll be, I guess, posting all the answers. There's a few more questions that we haven't got time to get to today, so we'll post the answers afterwards as well for you to look at. Last one, let's say, as a temporary solution, is there a way to expose related records in the pop-up using Arcade?
I'm assuming this is a temporary to that functionality not being in the new map viewer yet. Yeah, absolutely. You can, Julian was showing earlier the feature set to query and underlaying, in plenary, when he was doing his field data capture. So there's that same functionality to query your related records. So for the feature, you click on query related records and you can pull back most recent, summarize, do lots of cool stuff in Arcade. So yeah, definitely.
Cool, all right. I might as well do the last one here. When can we include a new web map as a new theme in Web App Builder? I mean, multiple web maps in a single app with theme switching. Anyone know the answer to that?
We'll email Esri about that.
Yeah. Take that one offline, I guess.
Yeah. But also local maps has that functionality, right? Have I read that question correctly?
Yeah.
Good point. Cool. That's all we had for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. You can definitely go head down to the expo area and have drinks and nibbles there. But yeah, thanks from all the team. Cheers.